Greetings, one and all. It's Matt Field, a writing candidate for governor. You can view and listen to my proposal at govmat.org, where you can actually read two other books that I've written, or one other book that I've written called Living the Fable Tale of the Emperor's New Clothes, which I encourage you all to go listen to or read. They are like audiobooks or just a regular book. I have made them, at least the proposal I've made, quite simple to print out so you can review that and highlight and check the references and everything else. But it's very comprehensive, and I, again, encourage you to do that. Lately, I have been trying to move things forward a little bit more on social media, and I've been getting a little pushback with people saying that often these third-party candidates are just going to pull votes away from the Democrat or the Republican, which is obviously true, but it doesn't make it wrong. People think that you should basically disavow many of your principles in order to focus more upon the win than what you're trying to accomplish. You know, if you're thinking quote unquote realistically, do you think that 1776 would have ever happened? Do you think the pioneers ever would have crossed the plains in order to arrive to Utah? Do you think Columbus ever would have sailed the ocean blue? Do you think any of these things would have happened if you thought realistically? Most things that are new begin with the impossibility. If you look back in history, not even that far, back in the 90s when people would speak about exoplanets, right? And these are planets that have the same capacity to sustain life as the Earth does. During that time, if you talked about those things, you were kind of considered a quack. People didn't believe that was possible. People didn't think that there were any other people in the universe. Now, of course, if you remember the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this has been a known fact for a very, very, very long time. Everyone knows that there are multiple galaxies and multiple planets that can sustain life. However, science had not yet proved it, right? And since science, the all-infallible science, could not prove it, then therefore it could not be, which again is a false premise. The issue with the human race is that we have the arrogance to believe that if it hasn't been done by us, then it's never been done before. And that's obviously false. Eventually, of course, they were able to obtain and build the build the correct equipment in order to see these exoplanets. And now almost probably every day, or at least very close to every day, a new exoplanet is discovered somewhere out in the universe. And this is something that we have to, we have to recognize, right? Is it unusual perhaps to vote for a Democrat or a Republican? Well, definitely unusual to vote for a Democrat typically in the state of Utah. It's more usual to vote for the Republican. But these are the two parties that have brought us where we are today. Now, what do you mean by brought us here today? Look at the current policies. Look at the way that COVID was handled. Look at the way that we continue to have drugs flowing into the state. Look at how we've allowed basically a sanctuary state for illegals to come here. These are all things that have happened basically under Governor Cox's watch. And not just that. There's been massive amounts of spending. I'm going to be coming out with an ad here very soon that's literally going to compare the similarities between the Communist Manifesto authored by Karl Marx and our current state today. You will be astounded at the similarities that we have already adopted into our society that mirror that of the Communist Manifesto. And that is, I think, is the proverbial boiling frog, right? We've slowly been accustomed to communism, to socialism, as we've implemented all these different programs, right? We've implemented the Fed, the Federal Reserve, which is actually, it's not even technically a portion of the United States, but it controls and circulates all the money as a central bank. We have public schooling. That was one of the first things they talk about in order to establish a communist state, is to have the state take over schooling. We've had that for years and years and years and years. Obviously sold as an option to make life easier for parents and all these different things. We have a massive amount of taxes that is levied against our property, which isn't based, we don't actually own, the state doesn't actually own all the property, but honestly, when you decide to buy a lot, the first thing that has to happen is you've got, it obviously is already registered with the state or with the county or whatever. They already know that that's there. If you want to build on that lot, you have to get permission from the state, from the county, and then every single step within that process has to be checked off by the county. Once you've done all the building, once you've done everything, you've now taken the property tax associated with that land and you've bumped it up significantly. And so every year now you have to continue to pay the county a certain amount of taxes, or the city a certain amount of taxes, because you live there. Now explain to me how that's different from them actually owning the property. Right? This is a tricky way that the government has snuck in and basically made all land public. Even though there's a small private portion of that, it is entirely public. Everyone can see the value of your home. Everyone can see everything about it. There's nothing private about it. And the reason that they can see that is because they want to be able to tax you at the highest amount that they can. And so when you look across all of these different things, you'll see that we are following the Communist Manifesto to a T, and it's slowly been implemented rather than all at the same time so that it would be unnoticeable. And so when people have read over my proposal and they've disagreed with this and that, these are things that augment liberty. These are things that augment our agency. And so here's the question. Do you want to live in our current state where you have a lot less responsibility, you are provided for with this and that, but you don't actually have all that much liberty? Or are you willing to take on more responsibility to obtain that liberty? And often, probably more often than not, we'll find a situation where people have been customized to Social Security, to Medicare, Medicaid. They've been accustomed to all of these social programs that are easy to obtain, that are easy to use, and why not keep them? Why not keep using them? I was surprised to see the number of people that are able to get on WIC, which is basically an assistance program for people with children. I really am blown away at how easy it is. I mean, if you're making $70,000, I think you can still get on WIC if you have a certain number of kids. And I think people that are deciding to take advantage of WIC, you probably need to review your finances before you decide to apply for another program. Okay, we have to focus on making sure that we can be more responsible if we want more liberty. Now, if people in majority decide that they would rather have these extra comforts by imposing more and more regulations upon their neighbors, then I guess so be it. We've made our bed and now we have to lie in it. But if you want liberty, you have to be willing to step up and take the responsibility. And that's something that I hope people understand and begin to grasp. Now, over the last little while, I have seen a lot of, last couple of days has been pretty crazy. In my last podcast, I talked about how Phil Lyman needed to run as a write-in candidate and that he needed to use the system that we have up and running, vvote.org, okay, which is basically all you do is you take a picture of your ballot and you submit it to the database, a secure database. You provide your driver's license number, but that's just for identification purposes and to add additional credit to it. With this system, it will ensure that we can hold the state's feet to the fire and ensure that if there's any irregularities between our count and the state's count, that we actually have evidence to bring to contest an election. Okay? I don't know if this has ever happened before, honestly, because there has never been a case brought, at least in recent history, to where there was evidence already provided of fraudulent behavior. Now, I'm not saying that there is going to be fraudulent behavior. I personally believe that there is. And there's ample, evidence to suggest that, particularly when you look at the Lyman case and the fact that the government wouldn't hand over the signatures, though there is no reason to prohibit that from happening. Particularly since Lyman is a representative, so he should be able to gain access to those. But they wouldn't release it. Now that seems really, really fishy, right? It's like if your mom comes to you and says, hey, did you clean your room? And you say yes, and she says, okay, I want to see it. And you lock the door to your room. Now, what do you think your mother would suppose had you done that? Most likely that you hadn't actually cleaned your room. Okay? And this is what that looks like. Everything's good to see here. Trust me. Just trust me. Just trust me. Come on, just trust me. Unfortunately, the government isn't based on trust, and they have shattered any inkling of trust long ago. And so that's why, I mean, this, among other reasons, again, look at, if you review chapter 7 in my book, Living the Fabled Tale of the Emperor's New Clothes, where I review over the 2020 election, you'll be mind blown at the amount of publicly available information that you can find that does not add up at all. There's some that it's completely obvious that there was fraud that took place. In fact, there's 4 states that had over 100% of registered voters voting. Now explain that, and you can't. There's no way to explain it. There's no way that you can have more than 100% vote. Anyways, so however, then just the other day, that was my suggestion, right? Phil Lyman run for that. He used this system. I think he's got a good shot, and he would be a decent option if I'm not elected, right? But here's the problem. Then he came out with this ad that I'll share with you right now. That was, I just couldn't believe it. And you've probably already seen it, but take a listen.
Hey, I'm Brian King.
And I'm Phil Lyman.
Now, Phil and I disagree better about most issues.
But the biggest thing the two of us agree on is that
Spencer Cox should not be our next governor.
One thing about us,
You always know where we stand on issues.
so let's try something different this year. Write in Phil Lyman.
Phil, come on.
Sorry, Brian.
Vote Brian King for governor. For the better.
So, I mean, first of all, to be completely honest, I think it's pretty funny. I think it's actually a pretty funny ad. And it's effective if you want King for governor. And that's the problem. I had never, and frankly, I have had a fair amount, I don't know if I should say a fair amount of communication with Phil, but I have spoken with him a couple of times, and we've communicated via text and email as I was trying to do my best to pursue the best option for the state, not necessarily if it were me. Okay? I hope that it's been clear for those of you that have followed that my intention isn't to take office no matter what. I had massive amount of hesitation in moving forward with this, and I still have, my doubts as to what will happen and all that sort of thing, but I'm here to stay. I will do it if I need to do it, and if I don't need to, then I'm okay with that too. However, after seeing this and after my interactions with Phil and the difficulty in reaching him and the things that he said that he's anyway, just in private conversation and in other things like that, and after seeing this, I'm actually not really convinced anymore that Phil is the guy to take on the state. He was the best option in terms of his reach. He was the best option and in some regards to what he has done. Now, I don't agree with Phil on everything. In fact, I disagree with him on a lot of things. But I thought that he would be a better option in terms of, I think the agenda that I've written is the best option. Hands down, bar none. You put any of those guys up against me in a debate or in a town hall or whatever it may be, and these policies will stand on their own. This proposal will stand on its own, not because I wrote it, not because I'm this genius, this and that, whatever, but because these are obvious truths. These are eternal truths that have been eternal for a very, very long time. And just because I decided to regurgitate them doesn't make me the author thereof, right? Now I compiled it, sure. And is that how I'd govern? Exactly. But that is where it ends, right? When it comes to some of these other candidates. They have the money, they have the organization, and so King and Lyman, they were able to get out there because what? The media has reported on them before. They are currently sitting in office. They've sat in office before. And they have the Democrat and the Republican dollars to get the word out pretty quickly and pretty easily. But that's the problem. right? That's the problem. And that's why I talk about the bracket system. Again, I suggest you review that. That's in my first priority as governor in Morality Over Monarchy. And please go review that. We have to remove money from this entire thing, because if money was not involved, then it wouldn't be based upon the marketing ability that some organizations have over another. It would be based on the best candidate, right? If you were to have every candidate come into your office, sit down before you, and you interviewed them, and you went over various questions, you wouldn't pick them because they were a member of this party or a member of this team, or they were a member of the same country club or whatever. You would pick them based upon their ability to perform the job, right? If you were being totally and completely honest with yourself, you want the best person for the job that's going to help you move forward with your objectives. You're not going to hire unless you're hiring them for a very basic production position, you're not going to hire your friend's son or something like that. You want to hire the guy that's had the experience, that knows what he's doing, has initiative, and is going to move forward. And I would put myself up against any of these guys any day. The problem is that since I'm an unaffiliate, I don't have the same money. I don't have the money. I don't have the same organization. I don't have any of those things. And by the way, none of the media is interested in any way, shape, or form in talking with an unaffiliate. Which, by the way, there was a recent study that was done. This was posted by, what's her name? Deidre. She's the current sitting lieutenant governor of the state. And she put, I'm trying to find this real quick, sorry. But she indicated that the most people that have moved from one party to another and have basically redistinguished themselves, for maybe lack of a better word, but they have moved, and I can't find, oh, here we are. So the 2024 party affiliations, the changes, there were 26,715 changes in party, okay? And you see that these changes went to people that changed to Republican were 5,312. People that changed to Democrat were about 3,400, and those that changed to Independent American were 2,985. The people that changed to unaffiliated were 13,234, half of the entire total. They almost beat all of everyone else that was listed. Pretty dang close. In fact, I think it's pretty dang close. They're half of everybody. So, which begs the question is, why is the media more interested in Republicans and Democrats? And it's pretty obvious. That's the power structure, right? All we have are occasionally there's a random independent out there in the crowd when you look at DC, but for the most part, it's Democrats, it's Republicans, and the United States has been strategically split in half to cause the greatest amount of discomfort, the greatest amount of disagreement, the greatest amount of disorder. And because of that, it prohibits us from actually doing what we're supposed to do, and that's to uphold God's law and do what is necessary in order to promote that. But politicians aren't interested in that. Politicians are winning for their team. It's the BYU mentality, where it doesn't matter how you do it or how it happens. You just got to beat the U, or you just have to beat the Y. And that is a silly, silly, silly idea and concept of moving forward. Now, I want to move on. I want to give a little bit of time to verify vote. Now, if you haven't gone yet, go to vvote.org. That's vvote.org. And you can look at the little video on how you upload your ballot. It's very simple. You just take a picture of the front, picture of the back. You put in your driver's license. You'll have to agree to terms. This isn't in the video, but you'll have to agree to terms and agreement. And I'm going to try and make that as simple as possible, because I don't want you to feel like you're getting the wool pulled over on your eyes. Basically, we'll go through all of it as comprehensively as possible, just to show you that all we're doing is we're just collecting the information in the event that the election needs to be contested, right? Which I believe it will be. I truly believe it will be. So we will have that up there. There'll also be probably a captcha that you need to do just to click on to verify that you actually are a human and you're not a bot. But outside that, it's a very simple process, and I encourage you to go take a look at that. And some people might say, hey, well, why are you doing this? First of all, there is a huge debate as to whether or not things are being properly run. If you haven't followed the Lyman cases, it's very clear that they aren't interested in sharing a lot of this information that normally would be totally and completely available. And that's the biggest problem, right? And so when you look at, there's a lot of information that's that's been floating around, and there was a poll that was conducted by 2KUTV, Channel 2 KUTV, and the question is how confident are you in Utah's election system? Okay, and anyone can go. I posted this on X and on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can go and click what you want. When I did it, it's going to be running for another 4 days. There's been 3,500 votes so far. And it says, how confident in your elections? There's very confident, somewhat confident, not very confident, not confident at all. The one that receives the most votes is, guess, not confident at all. 61%. 61%. This is barely divided. 61% say that they are not confident at all in the election systems. And the ones that are not very confident are 13%. So those that are, we're looking at basically 74% of people do not believe that our election systems are in tip-top condition, right? And then the other side, you've got one that says very confident, 21%, and somewhat confident, 6%, right? And so all you have is 27% there. You know, this is a huge gap. This is a massive gap. And look, let's solve it once and for all. Nobody should be against verify vote. All you have to do is put in, you don't have to put in any information other than your driver's license. Okay, and that information can't even be looked up, by the way. You can't, the only thing that can be done with the driver's license is it can be verified as to whether or not it is a real driver's license, and it's not just a random number. That's the only thing. Okay, but that part is crucial, because we, in the event that it has to be contested and we have to look back and see who voted where and all that sort of thing, we can verify those driver's licenses and determine, you know, if these are legitimate votes and all that sort of thing. So this process is very tight. It's very good, and I think it'll benefit both sides. Look, if you're very confident that it is okay, then upload your ballot and make sure that it is okay. If you think that it's a terrible system, then upload your ballot. We will prove it one way or the other. Okay, they're just a bunch of images, right? It's just a bunch of images that can be aggregated back down into totals based on county and the state and who voted for who and everything else. And that's a very simple process. And the nice thing about it is, like, for example, if something happens and they want to contest the election, they can come to us and say, hey, we want this information. We say, sure, go ahead, take it all. And we'll pass that information. This would have to be based, it would have to be in a legitimate company, but we would maintain the driver's licenses and pass on the voter data. Not the voter data, but the ballot data is probably the better word, because we will collect the metadata, we'll collect the GPS location, we'll collect the timestamp and things like that. Okay, so when you have all that information and you've plugged that in, then you'll be able to look and see, okay, we have this many votes in this county, this many votes in this county, and then go through that whole process. Now, if we have to do additional verification at that point and we have all the NDAs signed and everything's good, then at that point we'd provide the license information, and then they can verify it from there using an API. Again, that information can't access. You can't plug in anybody's driver's license number into Google and it locate your name and number and all that sort of thing. It doesn't work that way. It's all based in there's laws to protect that information. But we can verify. And so this process is so simple. Everyone should be on board, and this is one of the reasons I'm a little frustrated with some of these other candidates, because here they are complaining about the lack of transparency, but they haven't taken the time to really promote this very much, when they should. And I encourage everyone, please go out there over and over and over again. provide this information, vvote.org, to ensure that the election is conducted properly. And by the way, throw me a shout out too, because like I say, I believe that I have the best proposal and I will live by it. But I don't think you can say the same for some of the other candidates now. I appreciate your time. I hope that you will have an amazing week. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Honestly, there are so many good things to look forward in the future, even though there will be tough times. But if we can actually live in morality, we will be able to triumph over the monarchical forces that are going to try and take us over. Thank you.